Sollen wir starten oder gibt es noch irgendwie?
So please take a seat. We will continue. So we don't out of time too much. Our next speaker will be Franz Vater, and he will talk about his product InfoServer powered by tcl. So Franz, it's your turn.
Hello, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. They're not yet ready. I'm happy to be here amongst all the people appreciating the power of tcl. That's not always the case. I want to speak about InfoServer. That's just some data. Sometimes you will see v.org. That's just a playground. My company is the company Vimacon. And InfoServer is not a project. It's not a product. It's just something I do, let's say, a little bit privately. Today I want to show you a little bit about how it was born, then what were the wishes, the reference, how a reference installation could look like, and some technical details. Due to the short time of that speech, I have to hurry up a little bit and just making some stops to show you some technical details, which of course are interesting for you as tcl programmers. The name InfoServer signals that it should not be just a server for web pages, but for all kinds of technical services or services. You know that most of the tools today are web-based, and that means, on the other hand, that it should be possible to concentrate several features, several tasks into an own server-based, let's say, framework or so. That means documentation, especially data management, also for live data, and cooperation and collaboration features. The starting point is my little small company is building HMI systems for machines, for packaging machines and industrial label printers, which are then dedicated to the pharmaceutical industry worldwide, with all the needs of documentation, for example. And privately, I'm living in a self-governed co-housing project where 150 people, about 150 people are living together and trying to manage them themselves. And of course, you can imagine that there's a lot of collaboration features needed. This was, let's say, a feature wish list that should be possible. Of course, it's not ready. You can't use it in that way, but that was a starting point. A reference installation could be like this, just starting from the bottom. It's a normal Linux system I use. There's a tcl 8.6 interpreter with some standard packages. From the Linux side, I use just some packages, some tools. You could also port it to Windows, of course. There's a tclhttpd as a central unit, and there's the InfoServer system with all the packages and configurations, and on top the customized components, the active components, and the, let's say, payload, whatever you want to show, whatever you want to do. And in respect to the caller, there's usually reverse proxy, but that's just to make the life easier if it's combined with other web-based systems like a cloud server or CalDAV server or such. Some decisions were made in the beginning. First, to use in the company to use HTML as default document format, because this should be readable for all times. It should be file and folder based. Just it's not a database centric system, but it's file and folder based because it's easy to work with it, and you can even mount it into your local file system to work on. Arbitrary content must be possible, not just HTML. That's what I've shown. And there should be a database for administration and customer data. And at the moment, I support two. That's SQLite if you need an embedded or even portable version, and Postgres if you have a Postgres server running on your machine, or if you have some need for a server-based database. If we dig deeper in the folder structure, the first level is structured with roles in mind. That means we have one branch which is called server, with all the basic components. There's server admin with the configuration and control scripts, for example. There's site admin, which is the most interesting for this audience, because this is the place where the active TCL code resides. And there's the works branch where the payload data is placed. Within the works branch, there's just one fixed named folder, and then we have branches language specific. That means it's prepared to handle more than one language at one time. Of course, that's one of the real requirements I had. And then we come to the level of user contents, and that's what I call doc folders. The doc folder in that case is the atomic unit of information storage. It's not the smallest part of information, but it's just the level where we do, for example, access control. There can be any content, of course. That means you can also have a file exchange folder in this concept. You have usually at least one HTML file, but it's not a requirement. And there may be subfolders for file storage or to store your components like style sheets and so on. And as I said, the access control. There are two special doc folders, or two kinds. One is called site, which contains all the site-specific documents, let's say the story of your portal or whatever you do with it, the index page, sitemap, contact pages, forms, and so on. And there are one or more folders called skin, dot, and then a name, and that's the name of a skin. That means skins and standard pages are part of the work area. That means your user, if you build a portal with it, your user would be able to make an own skin. And you can imagine that skins and standard pages, which are selectable, make a perfect branding. Let's just have a look to the user and group structure, because that's important for access control. We have on the lowest level a person, which can anybody. A person can be a user. A person can be member of a user group or a peer group, and a user group can be a member of a peer group. That gives us a two-stage group organization where you can model all your needs. That means you can have one user group for your R&D department and one user group for the R&D department of your customer. And they both form, let's say, a peer group which is related to a certain project. Persons, user groups, and peer groups are represented by numeric integer IDs in non-overlapping number ranges. That means from the view of the server, there's no difference between a person or a peer group. It's just a number. When the user logs in, then internally a list is built with all the memberships, the direct memberships in user groups as well as the indirect memberships in peer groups. And this membership ID list is part of the session. That means the server knows exactly where you are, of course, and to which groups you belong to, because the groups give you, of course, the access rights. So access is controlled on, as I said, the level of doc folders. Every doc folder has an entry in the database with some access relevant properties, the so-called needed privileges. And this is in one part publisher, author, audience, which is more role specific. And there are more like write, upload, and contribute, where upload is clear and contribute means something like has the permission to contribute to a discussion or to a blog or so. The needed privileges are integer IDs, and it's easy to understand. They are directly matched to the user and group IDs. So you can give every doc folder the different access permissions which are directly related to a group or to a user. So one user can be author, a user group may be the publisher, and a peer group may be the audience. Let's follow a call. This is one possible call to one single page. It's _wiki is just the default name for if you didn't take an own name. Let's start in the beginning. Co-op is just the tclhttpd domain handler selection, and in this case also the routing information for the reverse proxy. The second component, named works, is something I call branch. We could of course have more than one branch, and then comes the language ID. The wiki page is just a name. It's a kind of your document. You can call it as you want. And Vista Manual, in this case, is the name of the doc folder. The marked components, works, language, and the name of the doc folder are checked for access control. That means this must match. And all components are used to determine the type of a document. The type of a document is something you specify yourself. That's nothing which is defined. And this is compared with as a regular expression against patterns in one configuration file. That means you can have whatever you want based on the real address, you can then match against this list of patterns, and the first match delivers 3 results. First is what I call processor, second is skin, and third is page template, which is part of the skin. The processors are a little bit like, if you have ever worked with tclhttpd, you know there are domain handlers, and the domain handlers look for the first component of the address, and that's it. The processors are processing the document, as the name wants to say, of any kind of document, not only HTML. They are selected by the URL patterns, and the processors, let's say, are branch handlers of any complexity. You can build in this processor whatever you want. It's just called if you enter a certain address, and then it builds your document, whatever it can be. You may have any number and flavors of it. The processors themselves may load other TCL code for their specific task. That means if you want to realize something like issue tracking, then maybe you have a package which makes issue tracking forms, and then you can load it into the processor. When they are called by the domain handler of the tclhttpd, then they get the context of the connection, as well as the name of the skin and the name of the page template. Let's just have a look to the connection, what a connection does. With every call, a namespace is created. That's different to other concepts in that area. And all the active components, everything you have in your documents and the processor itself is loaded in that namespace. The code is executed in this namespace only. Yeah?
Just a simple question, is it relevant with every single call when a web page asks for a document that a new namespace?
Yes.
Or is
yes.
it just for a session or something like this?
It's for that call, and after the call it's removed.
No caching.
Okay. Not cached?
No, at the moment not. Then we can have a look to safety, which is related to that concept. Code is executed in the connection namespace only. There's no intermix with other calls. Code is loaded from the site admin area only. There's no way, absolutely no way to load code from any other location. Tcl commands cannot be executed by the documents themselves, but only by means of the processor. And there's no evaluation or substitution at no time. That's totally different from the standard, let's say, the standard procedure where we have a document and which is a mixture of HTML and Tcl, and then we have an eval call, and that evaluates everything which is in, which for me, I think it's a wide open door for code injection or something like that, and therefore there's no access to variables, there's no access to procedures, except the procedures in the connection namespace, which are delivered by the site admin only. So variables and procedure calls are just ignored, that's just text. The only active element you can use in documents is a procedure call, which is then executed by the processor. And one small detail, the database access is also regulated and access controlled. And if a user needs database access because he has data like member lists or something like that, or inventory, then the site admin has to prepare a query which is placed in the database, and only this query can be executed by the given caller. The first and at the moment the most important processor is, at the moment it's called CityWikiPage. That's historic. I think it will be changed. That means code template for wiki pages. But now, in the meantime, it showed up that it can do nearly everything. And therefore, maybe it would be good to rename it. It's used to handle all kinds of HTML documents. The standard processing is, it reads the file from the doc folder as it's given in the URL. It reads the page template from the skin folder, which is also given. And it inserts the customer file into that page template. There's one placeholder to do that. And then it processes the active code in that merged document. That makes it possible to bring all the framing of typical HTML document, like the header, style sheets, references to JavaScript and so on, into the page template. And your payload data is just pure HTML without everything. No header, no footer, no navigation. That can all be in the page template. And because it's branded, you can have the same document for you, another document just by calling another skin for your OEM customers or your final customers or whatever. And the resulting document is delivered, of course. Let's have a short look into a real document. This is a page where we have just it's something like an index page, and you see that's pure HTML except one thing which is enclosed in hash bracket hash. That's just a convention. And the first is the name of the procedure, which, as I said, must be part of the processor. And then a list of key value parameters, so we can pass whatever we want to the processor. The first is the book index. That means there's some rule how to find books in your repository and then to show it. That's all part of the book index. And we have the second is doc link. You could have inserted also a link that would be the same. But if you use the doc link function of the processor, then the processor is checking whether you may read this document. And if you have no permission to read it, it will not even show the link to it. That's the reason why doc link is more powerful than the normal HTML link. Okay, that's what I said. It's only one kind of active code. The name, which was book index in that example, is then placed as the last part of the namespace, and therefore it can only be executed in that namespace. Okay, that's all what I've already said. Active code may be used in the template as well as your payload data. That means you can refer to the current skin, for example, or to whatever, also to history or parameters of the URL. And you can control your documents with that. There are some special features. Sometimes it's important, and that's also one of the reasons why I started the development of such a system. I wanted to have such write once, use many times, and that means we need something to put things together. The normal way, for example, for me today, writing manuals is to write single pages, like chapters, and then bind it together. And therefore, this processor has some special features. One is branding by parameters. That means you can override the page template and skin information. We have online editing by means of JavaScript. And we can build books. That means that's a special construction. Whenever the processor sees that it should be a book, what's called, then it looks for a book XML file in the doc folder. There are the chapters and headlines and so on, all defined in that book file, and then the book is dynamically created with every call. And there's, of course, PDF export and some zip export to export complete self-contained documents, even if they contain 10 or 20 files, it doesn't matter. It's completely relinked internally, and you can move it and you can send it to your customer. Active code, that's developing as I need it. Whenever I need a new function, I build it and then I work with it. And therefore, it's of course not complete. We have several navigation elements, images, document links, upload links. We can use the URL parameters, skins, titles, time, date. Some functions for making slideshows, presentations. There are conditionals. You can make documents conditional. You can just make a conditional wrapper around a certain part of your HTML, and this is only shown if you pass the key for this condition, so you have the possibility to write one manual for 5 customers and replace the name of the customer and at the same time hiding the information which is for another customer and so on. And because what the caller sees is just the result of all the processing, therefore there's no way to find out that there is another customer with another content. He sees just that what he may see and nothing else. File index, data grid, if you want to work directly on the database, a calendar which can also expand recurring events, the books, attachments, and whatever. The current state at the moment is that it can be demonstrated, I think, that everything could work. All the features I showed in the beginning could, in theory, be realized. That's for sure, because the processor may build a document which is completely ready and can build it of its own completely from nothing. And therefore, you can have whatever. Before I show you some real life examples, I would, okay, it's not the end. There are 2 versions of the InfoServers are running. I will show you. A large code cleanup is underway. I did want to have it ready for today, but it of course didn't work. And so I need some more time over the next few weeks. But that's important to bring it all together. And some features are realized only in parts. That means you may imagine if there's a backdoor which is easy to use, I use a backdoor instead of writing a form to make it really good looking. But that can be changed in the future. And the search function is very primitive. Limitations and performance are not yet evaluated. As I said in the beginning, the target is a small company, a small community with, let's say, about 200 users in that portal, and so, but there's no real, I don't think it would be a good tool for Siemens, but maybe, yeah, for a smaller company. The vision, my vision is that one day this, let's say, project would be something a hobbyist can roll out at home or on the Raspberry Pi or wherever he wants, and it's working. That's, I think there are so many features that people use from, like, let's say, Google or so. Why using Doodle? It's so easy to write a function like Doodle for such a server framework. I think it's a maximum of a week of work, and then there's Doodle. And we have every other concept. There are small, really small requirements, and I think with that concept it should be possible to cover it all. I tried to show you for short a real installation. That is one page where I opened a manual.
Probably we can't see that.
You can see it. Oh, it's better. Oh, now I have a problem to control it. Oh, not so easy with the mouse. There it is. To make it smaller. This document is just on the HTML level. It's just the headers and one doc link, which directly points to this internal documentation. And this is the current table of content of this book. And it's just one command, book toc. That's it, and that's shown in that way. And if we follow this, we come to something which should be usable as an online manual, where you can go through the pages. That's a little bit like we did it with DocBook in the past. More interesting, if you now take the PDF button, then we get a link to a PDF. And that's the same document as a PDF, formatted by a print style sheet, which is completely different from the style sheet we use for the online manual. Yeah.
Scroll back, there is some bug maybe to fix that. The lines are truncated.
Yeah, okay. That's the other thing. It's German. It's a German, it's a German site. That's the portal we use in our co-hosting community. And you see there's, for example, something where we have to organize events, or that's the occupation calendar of a commonly used room. Whenever you see there's to-do lists, and you can see maybe, or you can imagine that I can now show one to-do list for me, for all my groups where I'm a member from. I can show the list for a certain group and so on. That's all done by the internal logic, and therefore there's no real limit. There is also no. Okay, there's a small info button, and here you can see who has which permission to write, to read, to the document. That's just for documentation, just to find out. Okay, I have to come to an end. It's signaled very clear. Are there any questions at the moment?
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you manage document version and or diff using this?
Yes, you are asking about how the version control is done on content, you mean. That at the moment there's no, that's not the wiki also where you can see the history. It would be possible, of course, but it's not realized at the moment. I'm not sure whether it would be good to put a version control system in the back or to do it manually. I don't know. At the moment, there's no. Yes.
The processor is able to do everything that tcl allows.
Yes.
So it's nothing about secure slave interpreters or something. It's really the main interpreter with a new namespace, and he is allowed to open files, to write files, to open sockets, can do everything.
Yes, the processor may do everything because it's ours. Yes, it's if you write the processor, then we know what to do, and therefore for me this way seemed to be more powerful and interesting than to use safe interpreters, as I used it in other projects, but it's always a little bit more trouble.
Okay.
Okay.
So I would postpone other questions to the breaks, and
Yeah.
we can discuss that in detail so we get a little bit more in time. for your
Thank you very much.